People often ask about investment accounts and how they're divided. Again, every case fact specific, but we certainly can simply divide them, and we can split them, in kind. So if you have, 100 shares of a certain stock, we can move 50 shares to your spouse. There are other times that it makes sense to liquidate things, in which case both parties will receive a check. There are times that we'll trade off against other assets, so maybe it makes sense to keep the account, one account in one person's name, and there's an account with similar value, put that in the other person's name. So there's several options available to us under those circumstances. People often ask us about retirement accounts and how those are divided. In a divorce is the only time that a retirement account can be divided without any tax implications, without any tax ramifications, so that if your spouse has, for example, a 401k plan, that's a tax-deferred account, meaning that when the money is withdrawn, taxes have to be paid on it. However, in a divorce, we can get a court order that will divide that account between the two spouses, and you both will get the benefit of having money invested in a 401k plan. So I give you the 401k as an example, but any retirement account in a divorce, we're able to split without any additional tax ramifications, so that people have defined benefit plans, which is a traditional pension plan. And when I started practicing, we saw this quite frequently, less and less these days, mostly with civil servants. They still have these defined benefit plans. Those are plans that, after 20 years, you'll receive a certain amount of money each month for the rest of your life. Those plans we can divide, and each party will have a right to receive a monthly payment if that's how it's set up. 401k plans, 403b plans, IRAs, whether they're Roth or standard, all of that can be divided in a divorce, and all of that gets divided without any tax ramifications. We often have people come in and they're really concerned about protecting their pension. Somebody's worked as a police officer, a fireman, a teacher. They've put in 20, sometimes even more years of their life into that job, and they've really been counting on that pension plan, those pension payments down the road. And they often want to protect that, and they don't want to share that with their spouse. Understandable. Their spouse has a right to what we call the marital portion of that retirement plan. We can trade off. It's not uncommon that one person may say, I really want to keep that pension plan, and there's enough money on the other side to compensate the other person, so they're still getting their share of that. That does still happen. When I started practicing law, we very frequently trade off pensions for houses if the numbers worked out. More and more financial advisors, and that's something that we do recommend our clients speak with, but financial advisors are telling people, particularly the spouse who doesn't have the pension, that's not always the best idea. If you get the money up front, you're at risk of spending it, and a pension guaranteed for life can be very valuable even beyond the actual valuation of that. So it's case by case. It's something that we'll discuss with you as the case progresses, and depending on your financial situation, it may or may not make sense to consider such a trade-off if that's possible. There are some assets that can't be split. There are times that with stock options, with RSUs, where there's restrictions, they can't be shared with the other side. There's a lot of investments, people who have certain private equity investments in particular, we see this coming up, where you can't change ownership. When that happens, there are different ways that we can make sure that the assets are fairly divided. Sometimes we can get a valuation of those assets and trade off against other things. There are times where we'll do agreements that are basically, if we call it if, as, and when. So if we have an investment that currently doesn't have real value, but there's a chance that it'll pop down the road, we will do an agreement that if that happens, when it happens, it'll get divided. Another question that often comes up is with respect to bonuses. And where we see this most frequently is with people who work on Wall Street. So they'll get a big bonus, February, March, a bonus comes in. And the question is that considered a marital asset? Is that something that their spouse has a claim to? That's very fact specific. It depends on when the divorce action is commenced. So if the divorce action is commenced prior to that bonus being received, often people think, or at least the person who's receiving the bonus thinks, their spouse doesn't have a claim to it. That's often not the case. It depends on what the purpose of that bonus is. So sometimes the bonus is given for work that was performed the prior year. And if that's the case, then some portion of that bonus is going to be considered a marital asset and is going to be divided. Often, part of that bonus is locked down. The party who received it is not entitled to the full amount. They only get that money if they continue to work for the company, and that will happen in stages. So maybe they'll get a quarter of it in the first year. If they stay a second year, they'll get the other quarter. So it's staggered, it's laddered over time. And in those cases, some portion of that money is for work that that person will do post commencement of the lawsuit, and that portion the other spouse won't have a claim to. So when people have various investments, whether it's retirement accounts, investment accounts, whether we're talking about bonuses that were received or will be received, all of these things are very fact specific. They're things that it's really critical that your divorce lawyer understands these assets, understands how they're valued, understands how they're distributed. And once we know that, once we know it's out there, we can then explore the different options that are available to make sure that we have a fair, equitable resolution that works, that makes sense for our client, and that we can make sure can be effectuated in a way that is consistent with what your goals are.